The tiger approached them while Makoto and Satome were stuck in their spot. After a moment, Makoto put Satome down and decided to confront the tiger. He thought he'd be okay as long as he didn't get bitten. He cracked his knuckles and gave the tiger a fierce look. The tiger was surprised by his boldness. It couldn't believe Makoto was actually planning to fight it and had even taken a fighting stance. Satome was dazed, just watching Makoto, so there was no point in counting on her to stop him. Makoto charged at the tiger and tried to punch it, but the tiger ran away. Originally, in the game, the students were supposed to hide from the tiger, but now, the tiger was the one running away. It cowardly hid behind a wall, losing Makoto. After it disappeared, Makoto assured Satome she was safe. She was amazed to see him act so bravely. The tiger headed towards 𝐨𝐲. The person in the costume apologized to 𝐨𝐲 for being a coward and felt ashamed that they had hired a legendary doll maker for the plan to fail. 𝐨𝐲 decided to take matters into his own hands and switched costumes with the other butler. In the tiger costume, 𝐨𝐲 approached Makoto and Satome. When they noticed him, 𝐨𝐲's only thought was to corner Makoto and defeat him. Makoto looked at him as if he'd seen a ghost, mistaking 𝐨𝐲 for a standing tiger. After snapping out of it, he tried to hit the tiger, but it dodged his attack. Makoto noticed the difference in aura and power between this tiger and the previous one and was impressed by its fighting style. He charged at it again, and they engaged in a hand-to-hand fight. 𝐨𝐲 struggled to keep up in the heavy and hot costume. He didn't want to lose for the sake of the game and Satome. Glancing at her, he realized she was cheering for Makoto, which made him angry because she had lost sight of her goal and was blindly supporting him. At that moment, the plan had failed. To trigger the suspension bridge effect, they needed to try something different. Lost in his thoughts, he was caught off guard when Makoto approached and landed a punch square on his face. The force of the punch sent him tumbling backward. Despite his determination not to give up, he realized that fighting was futile if Satome didn't want him to win. Satome even urged Makoto to finish him off and aim for his eyes. Defeated, he conceded, accepting Makoto as the winner of the match. Later, in the broadcast room, Satome gleefully spun in a chair, still captivated by Makoto's performance. Meanwhile, the butlers lamented the failure of their elaborate preparations. However, seeing Satome's joyful expression made them forget their disappointment. They were content just to see her happy. Entering the room still dressed in his costume, 𝐨𝐲 was met with Satome's enthusiastic greeting as she boasted about Makoto's strength. However, 𝐨𝐲 shot her a deadly glare and began berating her for neglecting her butlers. Despite attempts by the other butlers to calm him down, 𝐨𝐲 continued to shout at her. The next day, there was a sudden commotion in the classroom as Makoto unexpectedly fainted. The doctor diagnosed Makoto with a cold and recommended isolation and rest for a while. He assured Satome and everyone that the cold had nothing to do with the death game. Someone probably gave him the virus. 𝐨𝐲 and a butler left the room to see all the students waiting for Makoto. 𝐨𝐲 told them that he would be fine in a few days. Yumi offered to take care of him while he rested, but 𝐨𝐲 cut him off, declaring that they would take care of him. They would employ any means to eradicate the virus so it did not spread throughout the school. The students turned out and commented on them being nice, to the point that students sometimes forgot that it was a death game. Satome brought wet towels to Makoto's room, even if she was asked to leave him alone for a few days. She opened the door and saw Makoto doing push-ups. She made her way towards him and asked him what he was doing when he was supposed to be resting. He replied that the games had been getting more physical recently, so he needed to become stronger. Satome yelled that he had to sleep. She scolded him for doing push-ups when his body was in such a fragile condition. Makoto was stunned, watching Satome speak so loudly. He sank back onto the bed, still in shock, and agreed with her. She instructed him to remove his shirt so she could wipe away his sweat. Following her instructions, Makoto complied, and Satome cleaned him meticulously. Makoto noticed her skill and remembered taking care of a sick 𝐨𝐲 when they were younger. Satome shared that she had experience from looking after someone like a brother to her who once caught a cold. She complained about him always overdoing it and neglecting his health. Suddenly, Makoto's stomach growled, interrupting Satome. He felt embarrassed and apologized. Satome, flustered, reassured him, nervously offering the porridge she had made. Blushing and avoiding eye contact, she handed it to him. Makoto accepted and heated up the bowl. Satome warned him not to expect much since she made it in an unfamiliar kitchen. Makoto took a bite and complimented its taste. Sayatome felt like fainting from the praise, but kept her composure, instead boasting about her cooking. Makoto finished the bowl quickly, delighting Sayatome, who took it from him with a grin. Makoto promptly fell asleep on the bed, leaving Satome worried. She checked on him and sighed in relief when she saw he was just sleeping, muttering about getting stronger in his sleep. She reassured him that he was already strong enough and patted his head. Later, 𝐨𝐲 watched the evening news. The newscaster reported a burglary nearby, where jewelry was stolen and the thief escaped. 𝐨𝐲 noticed it happened close to their current school. The newscaster warned viewers to lock their doors and avoid deserted areas. As 𝐨𝐲 watched, a suspicious man wandered the hallway outside. The students were promised a high standard of living. They could use a large bathhouse built specifically for them at certain times. All the female students hung around in the bathhouse. Satome was washing herself and Chihiro suggested washing her back. Although she said she could do it herself, Chihiro started anyway. Satome laughed as Chihiro tickled her back. Meanwhile, in the hallway, the escaped burglar wandered around. He didn't know where he was. He had thought this place would be good for hiding since it seemed abandoned, but he had second thoughts when he noticed signs of reconstruction. He decided to deal with anyone who got in his way. Passing a butler, he aimed his weapon at him. The butler easily dodged the attack, and the criminal retreated. Realizing the butler was strong, he ran away. The butler immediately called 𝐨𝐲 and informed him about the situation. 𝐨𝐲 ordered to catch him before any of the students got hurt. After the bath, Chihiro and Satome were in the changing room. Satome couldn't find her hair clip. Chihiro offered to help, but Satome insisted she could do it alone and told Chihiro to go back first. Chihiro agreed and left, saying she'd stop by Makoto's place on her way back. Yumi went to Makoto's room to check on him. Even though the isolation time was over, Makoto still felt unwell. He was fast asleep, so Yumi left a dating sim game for him as a gift. While looking around Makoto's luxurious room, an announcement came through the speaker. It warned that there was a suspicious person in the building, so students were told to go to their rooms and lock them. The butlers were searching for the criminal, making it hard for him to hide. He not only failed in his robbery attempt, but also made a big mistake by choosing this hideout. Satome's elite guard, who were also the butlers, were serious about finding him. They had means other than just humans to help them. They left an iron ball to chase the criminal, with 𝐨𝐲 controlling it and monitoring everything from the broadcast room. The criminal was running fast to avoid the ball, and just when he lost the ball, a flood of water engulfed him. The man didn't understand what was happening. First, he was chased by weird dudes in suits, then an iron ball, and then subjected to water torture. This abandoned school made no sense to him. He felt like he was in a death game. The criminal ran away from the water and went into the locker room to hide. Sayatome was there, just having found her hair clip. The man saw Satome and instantly pulled out his weapon to threaten her. Chihiro entered Makoto's room, screaming for Satome. She asked Yumi if Satome was there yet, but Yumi said no. Chihiro panicked because Satome hadn't been in her room either. Yumi asked her where the last place she saw Satome was, and she said it was the locker room. Makoto listened to the conversation from his bed. In the locker room, the criminal had a weapon pointed towards Satome and asked her if she knew Men in Black. Satome was so scared that her voice didn't come out. She had staged every dangerous situation until now with her butlers, but this time, the man in front of her was actually a threat. She experienced true fear, her eyes filled with tears, and she shook uncontrollably. The man commented that he had terrible luck today, but she wasn't half bad. He forcibly removed the towel covering her body. Sayatome cried, trying to cover herself with her arms. Suddenly, the man felt a powerful kick to his gut and was sent flying across the room. It was Makoto who had kicked him. He picked up the towel from the ground and handed it to Sayatome. Sayatome cried upon seeing him, recalling all the times he had saved her. Makoto staggered a little, and Satome held him, asking if he was all right. She noticed that he was still burning up and scolded him for being reckless. The criminal got up from the floor and threatened to take their lives. Satome punched him, and he fell back with a thud. Makoto's eyes went wide at the scene in front of him. Satome repeatedly punched the criminal and scolded him for wanting to hurt Makoto when he was already in pain. She firmly declared that she wouldn't always be the one protected. This time, she would protect Makoto. Her words surprised Makoto. Chihiro entered the room and noticed that Satome was still in a towel. She punched Yumi and told him to go back outside. The men in black captured the criminal and took him to the police. After dressing up and finishing everything, Satome properly thanked Makoto for saving her. She said she was terrified but happy. Switching her mood instantly, she scolded him again for acting recklessly and thinking he could do everything by himself. Makoto smiled and asked Satome if she would save him again if he got in trouble next time. Satome unwaveringly replied that she would always be there for him. Shifting the topic, Makoto asked her about the glasses. She answered that she normally wore contacts since her eyesight was bad. 2 days later, Makoto made a complete recovery. The butlers, watching him from the broadcast room, decided to hold a game soon. 𝐨𝐲𝐸 suggested going with the world's most fun death game, and the other butlers smirked. When the students woke up, they found themselves in a strange fantasy world, feeling confused and unsure about what was going on. Messages from mysterious figures called the Men in Black popped up, explaining that they were actually inside an online video game. Makoto, who wasn't familiar with modern technology, was especially bewildered and shouted out, questioning what was happening. Yumi stepped in to clarify, explaining that they were not in the real world anymore. To demonstrate, he asked Makoto to pinch his own cheeks, but Makoto felt nothing a sign that they were in a virtual reality setting. Yumi speculated that they might have been drugged and brought into the game while their physical bodies remained elsewhere. All the students were lying unconscious on the ground, each wearing a VR headset that connected them to the game world. It turned out to be a multiplayer online role-playing game that could be experienced through virtual reality. By wearing the headsets, they were able to enter and explore this digital realm. Chihiro was excitedly exploring the area, checking out various things while Yumi kept talking about the game. Chihiro thought it was kind of gross. The game admins then made an announcement, saying that the students had to defeat the Dark Lord of the land within half a day. If they failed, their headsets would emit special electromagnetic waves that could end their lives. In the broadcast room, the butlers thanked the game owner for letting them use his game, even though it hadn't been announced. The owner explained that he did it because the Satome family asked him to, and the data they collected would be useful to them. 𝐨𝐲𝐸 mentioned that half a day didn't seem like enough time for the students. The game owner reassured them, saying they had tested an abridged version, and there were experienced gamers playing, so they should be able to succeed. The students were progressing smoothly, but then the game owner noticed a problem. Satome was missing. Makoto couldn't find her anywhere among the students. He asked nearby students, but none of them had seen her. Chihiro and Yumi reassured him that they would probably find her soon, so they decided to continue with the task. Each group formed and set off to defeat the Dark Lord. However, Satome was nowhere to be found. The main goal of this game was to bring Satome and Makoto closer together. Satome's plan was to team up and strengthen their bond, something difficult to do in real life. Plus, the costumes were cute. But now, she wasn't with Makoto, dealing a big blow to her plan. The reason Makoto couldn't find her was because, due to a bug in the game, she had become the Dark Lord. She was speechless, realizing she was in such a situation. Fixing bugs that emerged was an important part of game design. If the bugs were left alone, the character could end up clipping through walls or walking on air. The students were playing the game Pride Forest. This game had not been released yet and had been in the works for 2 years. However, the developers had been slacking on debugging. As a result, a game player named Satome was appointed as the final boss, known as the Dark Lord. The butlers and the game owner panicked. The game owner didn't know what had caused the bug, making it hard to figure out. Half a day was too short for both the students and him. Satome, sitting on the Dark Lord's throne, wondered how this had happened. In order to meet up with Makoto, she tried to get up from the throne but failed. It was because the Dark Lord was a non-playable character, remaining on standby until its battle with the players. Satome was worried when a status screen appeared in front of her. It showed her skills, and she tapped the Devil Slash button. A black slash charged up and exploded on the opposite wall, leaving a mark. She smiled, realizing she had superhuman powers. Another button summoned a huge hand. Saotome started having fun, playing with her newfound abilities. She noticed a skill named Devil Gate and clicked on it. A real-time video of Makoto appeared in front of her. She beamed, realizing it was showing her what she wanted to see. She wondered if she could use this skill to peek at Makoto in the bath. In the video, she saw a female player scolding her partner for being weak and getting attacked. The boy sat on the ground, with one of his knees petrified. The girl sighed and commanded, "Heal," instantly healing the boy's knee. She smiled and said they had to support each other, so in times like this, he could count on her. The boy thanked her, and Yumi and Makoto approached them. Yumi called them Kuroki and Kodo and asked if they were a sage and an archer, to which they replied yes. Makoto explained that he and Chihiro were attackers, and they only had one mage, Yumi, on their team. He invited the two of them to party with them because one mage as a support was not enough. Kuroki and Kodo agreed to go with them. Saotome watched all of this from her throne and felt jealous. They were all on a real journey, while she had to sit there alone, keeping herself entertained. She wanted to be with them too. Suddenly, some strange-looking demons and a slime appeared before her. They were crouching on the ground with their heads bowed down. One of them spoke and called her, "Your Majesty." He commented that she seemed unwell. She understood that they were her underlings and had to make them believe that she was the Dark Lord. She spoke in a strange manner, saying she didn't want to spread her illness, so she preferred to be alone. The demons stared blankly at her for a moment before turning away, expressing disappointment. She thought she had fooled them, but they began whispering among themselves. One of them mentioned that if she wasn't feeling well, she couldn't fight, which meant they had a chance to overthrow her. They looked menacingly at her, and she was startled by the sudden change in their behavior. One of them declared he would be the next lord and ordered the slime to restrain her. The slime turned into ropes and bound her. The slime wrapped around Saotome's body, suffocating her. She remembered she had her own powers and used Devil Slash on the demons. The demons retracted, claiming they were just joking, but Saotome was furious and attacked them repeatedly. After getting beaten, the demons apologized to her. Saotome told them to be thankful for her mercy because any other lord would have eliminated traitors. The demons mocked the use of the word mercy, considering how she beat them to a pulp. She asked them why they tried to usurp her throne. They explained that human adventurers were attacking the demon army on all fronts, and the war was turning for the worse. Saotome noted that Makoto and the others were doing a good job. She mentioned that since this was just a game, the humans were obviously going to win. The demons were feeling the situation worsen, thinking it was time for a new lord because they didn't have many answers and might not survive the winter. Saotome took off her cloak and tore it into pieces to give to them, suggesting they use it to make clothes. The demons panicked, seeing her destroy a cloak that had been passed down through generations. They asked her if she could still be called the Dark Lord after tearing the cloak. Saotome replied that it was just a piece of cloth, and the demons' bodies were far more important. She knew they were likely to lose, but as the Dark Lord, she felt she should try to help them. She asked them to let her support them as their lord. Witnessing her kindness, the demons gladly accepted the cloak, and Saotome chuckled at their antics. Makoto's group encountered a formidable monster. Kuroki instructed Kodo to stay back while she shielded him. Makoto delivered a final blow to the monster, defeating it. However, the cave began to collapse. Makoto, Yumi, and Chihiro escaped just in time. As a large rock threatened to fall on Kuroki, Kodo pulled her out of harm's way. The cave collapsed behind them. Makoto and the others praised Kodo for his quick thinking. Flustered, Kuroki was reassured by Kodo that despite not appearing dependable, they were still allies and he would protect her. Blushing, Kuroki took Kodo's hand as they got up. Saotome's fascination with the suspension bridge effect affected someone else. In 6 hours, the students made steady progress towards the Dark Lord's castle. Finally reaching it, Makoto prepared to challenge the Dark Lord to a duel when he noticed who was seated on the throne. Makoto and his friends were shocked when they saw Saotome as the Dark Lord. Even though this revelation was unexpected, the rules of the game remained unchanged. Their task was to defeat her to complete the game. 𝐨𝐲 expressed resignation, admitting she had no choice but to accept defeat. Recognizing the failure of the game, she urged everyone to swiftly move on to the next one. Yumi found a silver lining in Saotome's villainous role, seeing it as an opportunity to simply let her win intentionally. While this approach might result in an underwhelming conclusion, it seemed like an easy way out with no need for conflict. Makoto agreed with Yumi's suggestion, proposing that Satome should stay put while they wrap things up. However, Satome had different plans. She unleashed a devilish attack, narrowly missing Makoto, who questioned her actions in disbelief. Rising from her throne, Satome confessed her awareness that no matter how much power she wielded, she would ultimately lose. Despite the game being rigged against the Dark Lord's victory, she refused to surrender. With determination, she challenged them to face her, shouting, "Come at me, humans." Everyone's jaws dropped at the declaration. As a member of the Satome family, she knew many people had supported her along the way. That's why she didn't want to give up on those demons. She shouted she couldn't abandon those kids and launched another attack. This time, the slash passed between Yumi and Chihiro. Chihiro said if Satome was serious, she'd fight for real too. Yumi asked Makoto to convince Satome to stop, but he said the same as Chihiro. He called them berserkers for loving fights too much. Satome punched with the big hand this time, but Yumi stopped it. He wasn't on board with the idea before, but now he was willing to help. He told Makoto to finish the fight in one hit, since the opponent was still a friend. Makoto said that was the plan and dashed towards Satome. She hurriedly launched another attack, but Makoto charged an attack of his own. The clash created a lot of noise and destruction. Satome got defeated in just one hit, and the game was cleared. Satome registered that she had lost. She knew she could never win, but she still acted foolishly. She didn't know what she was doing. Makoto asked her if she had a reason to fight. He didn't know what it was, but her face told him she was fighting to protect something. He applauded her for fighting on her own and offered her a hand to help her stand up. The giving praise despite being enemies theory kicked in here. Like delinquents who become friends after a fight and become more than just travel partners, their bonds deepened. The game ended, and the students woke up in reality. Satome apologized to Makoto for troubling him in the game with a slight blush on her face. Makoto told her not to worry about it. Kuroki and Koto woke up too. They remembered the events of the game and glanced at each other nervously. There were no casualties in this game. However, a new love had sprouted. Kuroki Hiroka had fallen in love with Tanaka Koto during the last game. She wanted to thank him for fighting alongside her and saving her by giving him some cookies. But she felt hopeless because the cookies she made looked awful. She wondered if she would ever be able to make them decent by herself. As Kuroki pondered her baking disaster, Satome walked by the kitchen and stopped when she saw Kuroki. She noticed the baking ingredients and utensils on the kitchen counter and asked if Kuroki would like some help. Sayatome put on an apron, and Kuroki asked her if she knew how to make cookies. Satome replied that she basically knew how to make everything. Kuroki expressed surprise at Satome's willingness to lend a hand, mentioning how she had been distant before. She even teased Satome about her previous standoffish behavior, calling her the Dark Lord cringe. Satome admitted that she hadn't paid much attention to people before, but meeting friends recently had changed her perspective. She realized she couldn't stay isolated anymore. Kuroki playfully jabbed at Satome for her previous aloofness, likening her to a rich girl who silently demanded attention. Despite this, Kuroki found Satome easy to talk to and asked her to guide her through making cookies since she felt hopeless at it. Together, they began mixing the ingredients, with Satome giving instructions at every step. Suddenly, Satome asked Kuroki who the cookies were for. Kuroki hesitated and then decided not to reveal the recipient. Satome recognized the look on her face. Being a love expert, she easily sensed that Kuroki was in love. Satome threatened that she wouldn't help unless Kuroki revealed the identity of her crush. She bombarded her with questions about how it all began, when she realized it was love, and so on. Eventually, Kuroki gave in and quietly muttered the name. She said Koto, but Satome misheard it as Makoto. At first, Satome was shocked, but then it made sense because Makoto was the coolest guy in school, unmatched by anyone. Suddenly, the girl she was supposed to assist became her love rival. So, Satome devised a plan to sabotage the cookies Kuroki was making. She suggested adding dried horse mackerel to the cookie dough, saying it was common in Italy. Kuroki hesitated, but Satome convinced her it would be okay. Then she put durian in, despite Kuroki saying it smelled too strong. Satome insisted it was normal in France and added it anyway. Finally, she included surströmming, known as the world's smelliest food. Kuroki objected, saying Satome was trying to mess with her. Satome claimed it was usual in Turkey, but Kuroki didn't believe her. The mix turned out terrible, and Kuroki said it broke the Poisonous Substances Control Act. While she yelled at Satome, Kodo came into the kitchen. He asked what was going on because it smelled bad. Satome saw Kuroki's reaction to Kodo and realized she was in love with him, not Makoto. She felt relieved because she didn't have to worry about a love rival anymore. But then she realized she made awful cookies. She tried to hide them, but the smell gave them away. So she ate them all while Kuroki and Kodo talked. Kuroki was surprised to see they were gone. Kodo noticed the cookies Kuroki made earlier and asked if he could have them. Kuroki said they were rejects, but Kodo ate them anyway. Kuroki was nervous, but Kodo said they were good. She couldn't believe it and asked if he was lying. He said they tasted better than they looked. Satome smiled at the happy ending and was glad she had a friend to talk about love with. Satome arrived at the broadcast room and fainted right away. The butlers went into a panic, wondering what had happened to her. It also smelled terribly, so they wanted to know what Satome had done. The admins had mentioned, a healthy game begins with a healthy body. So, because of the stress of the game and being stuck involuntarily, they arranged a special plan. They opened a pool for everyone to use. 𝐨𝐲𝐸 set up a yakisoba stall and also sold swimsuits. A student ordered yakisoba, and his friend questioned 𝐨𝐲𝐸 if he was really a bad guy. 𝐨𝐲𝐸 responded, saying he was involved in the death games, warning the students to be careful around him. Chihiro invited Satome to play with her in the pool, and Sayatome agreed. Chihiro threw a ball at Yumi's face, accidentally hitting him hard. Yumi fell into the pool, and Satome asked if he was okay, calling him Hanu, which means flame. Yumi requested that if she was going to call him by the wrong name, at least use a water-related one. Makoto suggested they train a bit because they had upcoming games. Satome happily agreed and got ready to throw a ball. Meanwhile, Kuroki walked around the pool, watching people. Most of the girls there had big bazungas, unlike Kuroki, who felt a bit insecure about her washboard. She saw Kodo nearby and went over to him. Kodo, covering his eyes, told her not to come closer. This made Kuroki sad, thinking he might dislike her. But Kodo nervously explained that with her in a swimsuit, he didn't know where to look. Kuroki smirked and teasingly called him a pervert, getting closer to him. Kodo tried to defend himself, but Kuroki kept teasing him. Then, she took his arm and went to join Satome. Later, as it got dark, everyone left the pool. Chihiro suggested they head back, and Yumi and Makoto agreed. Yumi and Chihiro left, but Makoto noticed Satome still in the pool, holding a ball. He asked if she was leaving, but she said she still wanted to play. Makoto said everyone had left, so they'd play another time. 𝐨𝐲𝐸 saw this and got an idea. He told Makoto and Satome to drain the pool. When Makoto asked why, 𝐨𝐲𝐸 threatened him with a weapon, mentioning the keys to the pool and ordering them to stay until it was drained. Satome finally understood his plan and pretended to be sad about staying behind. She complained to 𝐨𝐲𝐸 about the odd job, and he left. Satome then asked Makoto if they could have some fun since they had to stay anyway, giving him a seductive look, and he fell for it.